name is Mary Lucy and I'm an occupational therapist working in Sensational Kids in Clonakilty. Sensational Kids is a not-for-profit organisation and we have 4 centres across Ireland: Kildare, Monaghan, Mayo and Cork. We are a multidisciplinary team, so we have occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, play therapists and educational psychologists. The purpose of today's video is to give you a virtual tour of our sensory integration gym. So our gym is just one part of our child development centre, but it is where we carry out most of our occupational therapy sessions. So generally a child will come with their parent and wait in the waiting area. They'll be collected by their therapist and then brought into the gym. They remove their shoes, and as you'll see, we don't work in shoes either. So we have lots of different equipment. It's a bright space. The children generally love coming and hate leaving. Although they're challenged within sessions, it is a very playful environment. So just to talk through some of the equipment and its purposes, this is the steamroller ramp. So the child lies on their tummy and pulls themselves up the ramp using the rope. This is a good regulating activity because lying on your tummy in prone extension is an anti-gravity position. The child is getting nice heavy work and proprioceptive input through their shoulders, pulling the rope. They walk across the balance beam, so challenging balance, a nice way to assess for gravitational insecurity, and then they crash onto the cushions, which also give that kind of proprioceptive feedback. The cushions are probably the most important equipment that we have in here because safety is always at the forefront of everything we do, so they allow us to use the suspended equipment and that safely. You'll see that we also have mats, so we have the yellow cushion mats and the green mats which we spread out across our space. Generally the gym is one big space, but because of COVID we've had to implement new policies, and that's why we have these partitions to divide the space into 2 to allow myself and our other occupational therapist Sarah carry out sessions at the same time without facilitating interactions between the children and to comply with health and safety guidelines. These here are tyres, so we have, one of them is a tyre swing, but we usually use these in obstacle courses so you can get the child to crawl over them, sit in them if they need additional postural support. We work an awful lot on motor planning using our SI approach, so getting the child to plan their own obstacle course. A lot of the equipment we would kind of group together for obstacle courses. This is a space hopper, so the child sits and hops. It gives nice proprioceptive feedback and also vestibular input. It's really good for core strength, nice alerting activity, and one that we would always recommend for home and school because they're affordable, they're accessible, and you can use them indoors or outdoors. This here is the walrus. So quite a popular piece of equipment. Again, you have to be very careful around safety with this because it is filled with air and the children generally go straight off it. So we would cover the area around it in pillows. You can ask the child to crawl over it. You can ask the child to lie on it and you can gently sway. It's to give lots of proprioceptive input, really, and they're getting that from the crawling, like bilateral crawling or commando crawling over the walrus, while also getting the crashing onto the cushions. A weighted blanket is a tool that we often use in sessions, and I often pair this with the walrus, so if a child is lying on their back on the walrus, you could throw the weighted blanket over them. So this offers like deep tactile input and proprioceptive input, and it can be really calming for the child. We also have a variety of suspended equipment, so I'm just going to show you how some of these work. I don't have a child to demonstrate the equipment, so I'll just explain. So these are our suspension points. We have 6 of them. 5 of them. No, 6. These, I suppose they just take a little bit of getting used to. So you just hook on the clasps and you can lift the swing. Again, like I said, safety is incredibly important, and we would have to carry out regular risk assessments just to ensure that all of this equipment and the suspension points and that are functioning properly. So this is the flying disc swing. The child sits on the swing and hugs the middle part. So it's good for core strength and balance. You can incorporate nice vestibular input. We generally do it quite gently. This can be calming for the child. And then also, because they're hugging the swing, there's huge muscle activation, and that's nice proprioceptive input. So generally I would pull the pillows over. You could even do a little bit of shaking and crash the child onto a pillow. With all of the activities, we try and make them as motivating and purposeful as possible for the child. So you might get them to collect blocks, having to reach down, collect the blocks and throw them into a target. With the flying disc swing, it's actually very important to be aware of rotary movement. So like I said, we were doing linear movement there, backwards and forwards. Particularly with children with epilepsy, rotary movement can be slightly more dangerous, so it's the best to avoid that. It can also be kind of overstimulating for children who are more sensitive to vestibular input, and you might find that they become a little too heightened with rotary movement. What's very important when you're using all of this equipment and using an SI approach is always monitoring the child's response to the activity in the moment. So if you're finding that the child is getting too heightened, it's pulling it back, maybe giving less of the swinging, or just changing up the activity. So this is called the bolster swing. It's probably one of our most versatile and most used swings, I would say. So again, you're ensuring that you're using your crash cushions, so you can get the child to lie on their tummy on the bolster swing. Again, that's in your anti-gravity position. Small bit of linear movement. You can add your weighted blanket for that kind of grounding effect. You can make it purposeful. They're a pirate on a pirate ship having to reach for treasure, throwing it over to Treasure Island. Nice opportunity for vestibular input. Other pieces of equipment that we have, like I said, that we would incorporate into obstacle courses would be the likes of the barrels. So lovely heavy work climbing into the barrel, climbing out of the barrel. Your block of steps here. This is the steamroller. So the child squeezes in through the middle of the steamroller. The rollers roll along the body, so it provides nice proprioception and deep tactile input. Deep tactile input is particularly helpful for children with tactile defensiveness because it just desensitizes that tactile system for them. Gym balls and peanut balls are something that you're most likely already familiar with. So these are things generally that parents will have at home already, or teachers will have in schools. Really versatile for a smaller child. Get your crash cushions, put the child up on top of the ball, nice bouncing and crashing. Like I said, always monitoring the child's response, making sure they're not anxious or overstimulated or heightened by the activity. You can get a child to lie over the ball on their tummy, holding themselves up with their arms to complete an activity, a fine motor activity even, rolling them over the ball to reach for different objects, different games. You can also use the gym ball to roll over the child. So similar to the steamroller, you're that way giving nice deep tactile input, and it's nice and calming. You'll see that we have a dark den in the space also. So this is really to provide a safe space for the kids that use our services. So if they're feeling at all overwhelmed, overexcited, anxious, annoyed with us perhaps, or upset, they can kind of retreat to this space until they're feeling calmer. A trampoline is another very versatile tool. So we usually pull over our cushions. What's really helpful with a lot of our activities is getting the child involved in the setup, because you're getting loads of lovely input in that way. So the heavy work alone in pulling the pillows over to make a pillow mountain is really helpful and can be really regulating for the kids. So we'll do some jumping and crashing. If I want to make this harder for an older child or a higher functioning child, I can throw a ball to get them to hit it back to me while they're jumping, to work on the likes of sequencing and timing as well. I think that's most things covered on this side. So over this side we have what was our ball pool. So again, because of COVID, we've had to remove the balls because it's just too difficult to clean, and we've made it a crash pit, so we've just thrown a lot of our crash cushions into it. We have this big structure here is the climbing frame, so there are different climbing ladders, and there's 2 different climbing walls. There's also the monkey bars, and sometimes if kids are comfortable with it, they'll crawl up and over. You'll see that we just have some more peanut balls and gym balls on top of that structure. This one here is a scooter board ramp. So the child lies on their tummy on the scooter board, and they have to pull themselves up the ramp using just their hands or a rope. So again, prone extension, pulling with the rope, and really, really tough. Like it's a great opportunity for heavy work. And then the child can decide whether they want to sit on the board at the top or lie on their tummy on the board at the top and get to whiz down. For a lot of kids, getting up is the heavy work, really intense proprioception and maybe less motivating, but that's why you pair it with something like the whiz down to make it more motivating for the child. Just to have a look at some more of our swings. This is a shaky ladder which you hang up and just obviously put up higher, getting your crash cushions around. Lovely opportunity for climbing, and you can give it a little bit of a shake and they crash down again. This is the acrobat swing, so this is one of my favourite swings. It's made from Lycra, and there are 4 different layers. So I find this nice and versatile because if you have a child who presents as quite low arousal or flat, you can pop them in here and you can be quite vigorous in the swinging. This way you lift their arousal levels, you tend to get lots of the laughing, and the child becomes more alert, more engaged. But it's also a very calming activity for children who need to be that little bit more regulated. So you can ask the child to climb in, you can do a treasure hunt. They have to crawl between the different layers of Lycra, which is deceivingly difficult and really intense and heavy work and proprioception. So again, you're mixing your proprioception with your vestibular input. This one is called a hammock. So it's probably quite difficult to imagine this one without seeing a child in it. It's very difficult, very challenging for motor planning. So for our kids that have difficulty with motor planning, it can actually be quite hard to get into this swing. So we encourage them to get in with their knees first, and then they lie in the swing on their tummy. They can self-propel with their arms. So again, really nice linear input, deep tactile input with the swing wrapping around them, and again making it motivating, making it purposeful, getting them to collect different objects, throw them in, so you're also addressing your ball skills, aiming, catching. This swing is similar to the bolster swing on the other side. Sorry. So what I like to do with this one is hang it up, obviously, get the child to lie on their tummy and wrap their arms and legs around. Really nice proprioceptive input, activating all those muscles and joints, nice and grounding for the child. Can incorporate a little bit of vestibular input then with some linear movement. This is the platform swing, so a similar idea. You just hang it up on the two of the suspension points. Really versatile. You can get the child sitting on the swing or lying on the swing. For a child that's more posturally insecure, you could grab one of your black tires, say that I showed on the other side, put it on the swing just to give an extra bit of support. A lot of our children benefit greatly from routine. So, like I said, we generally keep the routine relatively consistent in that they transition in, remove their shoes, you know, do our introductions and our greetings, and then we get involved with the activities. But we also tend to use visual boards so that the child can maybe pick their own activities. It's to support children who have difficulty transitioning between activities, but also children who may have difficulty with turn taking, and that might be something that we're also incorporating into our intervention plan. We have lots of different fine motor activities that we would generally combine with some of the activities that I've already showed you. So you've probably seen that even with the best of equipment, a lot of these OT sessions, your SI approach with children involves lots of creativity, lots of, you know, being playful, being flexible, making the activities motivating. It seems like it's a game to the child, it is a game to the child, but you're tackling all of these underlying areas that I'm sure that you've already discussed with your lecturers. Just before we go, I'm just going to also show you our sensory room. So sometimes before we go home, we'll transition into the sensory room if a child finds it calming. So equipment in here that gives information to the visual sense, auditory, tactile, and is just a nice calming way to end the session if that suits the child's sensory profile. So, thank you very much. Best of luck with your studies, and yeah.